Welcome to Compliance Uncomplicated, an interview series dedicated to simplifying the unnecessarily complex world of risk and compliance. Hosted by Drata experts, each episode will tell a new story about high-growth startups and other brands that are building compliance pathways towards a culture of security. Every business, industry, and team has unique challenges when it comes to building trust. And for many startups, compliance is one of the first stepping stones towards that pathway. In each episode, we'll hear from founders, visionaries, and those tasked with building a foundation of trust for their brand. It's time to unravel the jargon and abbreviations and uncomplicate compliance.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Compliance Uncomplicated. I am one of your hosts, Elliot Volkman, the Director of Brand Content Community here at Drata. I wanted to give you a little bit of a primer on what this podcast is because it is generally brand new and you may not have caught the first episode, or maybe you're just jumping in. So, Compliance Uncomplicated, while it obviously has compliance right in the title, it's actually really about the stories of organizations who are building really cool and interesting things. Startups, if you will, in particular. So organizations, obviously, they're small. Some of them have more resources, more people available, but compliance can be a burdensome and generally manual approach, and that's just traditionally how it's been. Obviously, here at Drata, we automate everything to the extent that we can, and we take a lot of that pain and burden out of the process. So that is a lot of what we're going to have conversations about as you're going through this podcast journey with us. You'll learn more about very interesting startups who are doing interesting things and not having to deal with the slowdown that compliance sometimes involves. As we're going through this, you'll be able to see that organizations can continue to accelerate and move at the pace that they have established without really truly being held back from some of the things they are compelled to do. That being said, I'm going to hand this off to our proper host.
Awesome. Thanks, Elliot. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jay O'Brien. He is the co-founder and chief daymaker at Client Giant. My name is Helena Medin, and I am the senior community strategist at Drata. Jay, it's so nice to have you here today. Would love to learn a little bit more about you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Helena and Elliot. It's a pleasure to meet both of you. Yeah, what do you want to know? You want to go way back? You want to go client giant related? What are we talking? What do you want to know? I'll
Let's
tell you anything
learn.
you want, Helena.
Yeah. Let's learn a little bit about you as a person, and then you can dive right into Client Giant and your journey there.
Yeah, I can probably do both at the same time. So, my background was in real estate. So, as a career real estate agent from maybe 2010 on, that was primarily what I did. And I had plenty of jobs prior to that brought me to real estate, as many real estate agents have that sort of journey too. Um, but throughout the first couple years of being a real estate agent, I just noticed a lot of processes that were broken and how sloppy the industry was at large, and really how the service-based portion of it was extremely lackluster. So in an effort to kind of audit exactly what it was that I was offering and to see how I too wouldn't have my services be commoditized and taken over by the person down the street and several others that have their real estate license, I really began to be very honest with myself as to what does it look like when you work with Jay, whether you're a buyer or seller. And rather than just thinking of it on my own, I actually went to Zillow and Yelp and all the places that had reviewed me to read these quote 5-star reviews about how amazing Jay is, that I have asked for these reviews, right? Um, and they all kind of had the same tone to them, which was he was always on time, he was always organized. We got the home of our dreams, communicated great, and I'm reading all this and I'm like, this is alarming because that you're just explaining someone doing their job. There's the person down the street can definitely be organized and can definitely be punctual. That's hardly going to defend my business. So by being extremely honest with myself, it really kind of showed the white space of if someone's willing to to post a 5-star review about a stellar experience and I'm being praised for how organized I am, what would happen if you could really pull the red carpet out for somebody and make them feel like $1 million throughout an entire transaction and long after? I'd be willing to bet that you'd build a passionate referral and a diehard raving fan. So I started to manually inject those things into the buying and selling experience. So that could range from getting moving boxes sent to your front door during a deal with a note that's just like, hey, one less thing you need to worry about. And really kind of addressing a lot of the pain points and stressful moments of a sale with my consumer and take care of a lot of that for them. So, forwarding of address, transfer of utilities, arranging moving vans, that sort of thing, where you kind of took this concierge approach. And then, meanwhile, when their loan was approved, they might get like a bottle of wine and like congratulatory gifts that happened far before the closing. In our industry in real estate, there's like the closing gift, and it's kind of all leads to that point, which was never really my style because I felt that it kind of just solidifies the end of a relationship and it also quantifies a human relationship saying, I appreciate you so much. Here's how much, as opposed to doing things throughout the entire transaction. So that, that worked out extremely well and catapulted my business. I was fortunate enough to be named 30 under 30 with the National Association of Realtors in 2015, and that kinda opened up all these doors to speak on this philosophy all over the country and all over the world in some cases. Um as keynotes for different conferences and speaking about the philosophy of gifting and why it's important to go deeper with a sphere you already have as opposed to wider with one you don't. And really getting into the granular reasons as to why. And then in 2018, um, this basically spawned into years of speaking engagements and years of talking about the philosophy and saying, what if instead of telling people what to do, we just did it for them and created an automated technology solution that was like, you're going to look like the most thoughtful person at all times, and you will not have to do anything. You won't choose the gift. You won't write the message. You won't handle the shipping. You're just going to plug someone in and you just know that you're automating your thoughtfulness. So that's how Client Giant was born.
That's an incredible story. Yeah,
Thank
I was
you.
just gonna say that's an incredible story and just humanizing a very transactional experience can really generate a lot of loyalty with customers and really elevate a business and also speaks to your authenticity in the type of work that you do. It's actually really funny too because I worked in the review world for quite some time. So I'm big on client experiences and I think that's translated even to my work here at Drata. We always put the customer first. In my Yelp days, it was the same thing as far as reviews. So you're speaking my language here, and this philosophy translates pretty well to a lot of business owners. So, Elliot, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah. Fortunately, I will only bug you for a short bit, and you actually answered our first question, which is kind of the inspiration behind what spurred Client Giant. But I do have to make a note. I absolutely wish my real estate agent handed off some boxes as we were kind of in the process. If they just showed up at my door, that is the kind of thing that would absolutely delight a client and a customer. So actually, Helena, I will hand this off to you to
Okay,
kind of run through the rest of the show.
sure. Sure. And one of the other things I wanted to remark too is the timing of the gifting too. Doing it throughout the experience rather than signifying the end of a relationship. I think that's really important to relationship building and generating loyalty and just, again, that authenticity, which people value so much these days. Okay, so moving on. Um, how do you leverage your own product to build a lasting, memorable company culture and employee experience? I know you touched on that quite a bit, but you can elaborate a little bit. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So yeah, it's absolutely important that you practice what you preach, and so we're very meta here in the in the aspect that what we do externally, we also do internally. So as an example, when a job offer goes out to a prospective candidate, it's not done via email. We've gathered enough information about this person through the interview process. We found them on social media. We know what makes them tick. We know what their hobbies and interests are. We know about their family life, whatever it is that we possibly know. And we will curate a custom tailored gift specifically for them and then hard bound the offer with it. and it will just show up randomly at their house. And of course, they're not expecting it. They interviewed with this company days or weeks ago. They open it and there's kind of everything about why we are gifting them with this and welcoming them to the team with this hardbound offer. So that kind of kickstarts the company culture aspect here at Client Giant. And we do celebrations for the first day, 100 days, work anniversary. Tonight is our holiday party and it will be fantastic. And so we invest really heavily into our people. The core of Client Giant and really the core of how my real estate business came about was really just almost generosity to a fault, where of course what goes around comes around. But if you just don't focus on that and just do what you want to do to show extreme appreciation, that is of the most importance. And so that is what we do here at Client Giant for our employees. Um, which is really like the Client Giant way because our mission statement as a company is if you have the power to make someone's day, you'd be crazy not to.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of these philosophies can be applied to everyday life as well. So it's amazing that you're using this for a business concept. Here at Drata, we're also in the business of trust, as you know. What are some ways that Client Giant is building trust with customers and partners as well?
So if I told you how one of our biggest plans works, you'd probably think I was crazy if I told you this in 2018. But our hands down, our most popular plan is called Top of Mind. Top of Mind is comprised of 4 gifts that go out quarterly to your clients or employees or whoever it is that you're putting on there. At random times during the year, they're predetermined like January, April, July, and October. But here's the stipulation. You pay that $99 up front, and in exchange, you're getting the 4 gifts to your clients. You don't know what the gift is. You don't know what the message says. You don't know exactly when it's going to go out. You just trust us. And it seems wild, but we have fortunately knocked it out of the park when it comes to this. And every time a gift gets delivered, people are wowed and there's like, what? Okay, just keep doing whatever it is that you're doing. So I'd say that we have built trust among our members. That's who we call our customers, our members, um, far more than anything else. That common denominator, I think, would have to be trust, just in the very nature of what we do. And when you're giving us your client or employee or whatever information, I mean, you're essentially outsourcing a personal relationship. So it's not something that we take lightly. I believe that it has to be done very carefully, very tastefully, and that's really the art of what we do. Nothing tacky.
Yeah, totally. I think there's very little room to miss the mark and when you're doing something so personal and such a personal exchange. And it sounds like you guys have really there is an art to it and it can be difficult to do, but it seems like you've found um the way to do it correctly and build that trust among your members. Um, as chief day maker, and actually, let me roll this back. I would love to know what a day maker is. We had a little conversation amongst ourselves. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so I'm one of the founders and CEO here, but instead of having a CEO title, we figured why not do something that is very in the nature of what we do here. So everyone here is making days, and I would be the chief day maker in the sense that I am steering the ship.
Okay, well, that's great. And, sometimes work can be stressful. I know in today's, day and age, there's a lot of stress going on in the world. What a good feeling to go to work every day and know that you're achieving, happiness in people's lives. Who doesn't like to give a gift? Who doesn't like to receive a gift? And
For
just
sure.
that energy is really, really, really wonderful to make a living out of and have a purpose around. So, as chief day maker at Client Giant, do you have any tips for simple ways that you can make someone's day? I know you touched on the moving boxes, which resonated with Elliot here, and lots of other ways that a bottle of wine, which resonated with me. And there's lots of different ways. But if you want to give us some other examples, we'd love to learn more about the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, this cascades to my personal life, and hopefully, a lot of the employees here do the same for just doing random acts of kindness. And it really depends how much you want to invest into that sort of thing. I usually encourage people to be bullish with that sort of thing because you're gonna forget about it in, like, a day, maybe 4 days, you know? The person who is on the other end of it will probably be telling it the rest of their life if it's grand enough. So, that could be as simple as tipping a valet a $100 bill, you know, or a server, um, where it's like, "Well, geez, this is normally a couple bucks to park my car," you know? But you're like, $100 seems absolutely insane. The reality is there's something going on in everyone's life. Everyone's got a pebble in their shoe. And if you're able to pierce through the noise with something that is unreasonably generous, it will not only impact that person in that moment, but it will serve as a domino effect for the rest of their day. The way they treat their spouse when they go home, the way that maybe they let the car in front of them go, you know, who's turning out, and the generosity kind of self perpetuates itself. So in that case, I would make the argument that the $100 in this example is very well spent. Um, Very simple things like going through, whether it's a drive-through or Starbucks or any sort of line like that, paying for the person behind you is an easy one. If I ever find myself in a drive-through, which I try not to much nowadays, but but it does happen. General rule of thumb is to just always pay for the person behind you, and don't get caught up in it. Don't think about it. Don't bargain with yourself. Just do it. Do it every single time. The reality is if you can't pay for it twice, you probably can't afford it once. So just do it. And that again will cascade down, and sometimes if it's in person, it'll be as simple as buying whatever it is you're buying as well as a gift card, and then just handing it to the person behind you, say, use this until it runs out, and it just keep passing behind you. Um Little random acts of kindness like that that just go a long way. And in a lot of these examples, depending on what it is, um, that person may never know. Like anytime I've ever done that to the drive-through, you're never gonna get thanked for that. You're gone before they even know what happened, you know. But just knowing what you're doing selflessly is super important. And, I'd say something else that you can do, or those who are listening that, do not wanna spend any money, that I would imagine has even more or just as much impact. Um, when you go to a restaurant and you're served and, the service is great, write a handwritten thank you card to that server. You know the address of the restaurant, you know the server's name. It's very simple. You just make a note in your phone, and when you go home, you can literally just write a thank you card, like how great the service was. Uh, I would venture to guess that they probably never received that from a restaurant patron in their entire life. So, and that's next to free. So little things like that.
And not to jump in on that, but I've got to say, like, if you're in a scenario like that, and I'm sure like a manager saw a handwritten thank you card, the impact could also be financial for them in the long run. Like, I don't know if you all saw, but like right now, there's kind of like this viral thing going about around where you can thank Alexa, your Amazon device, for a well delivered item, and it'll automatically tip $5 to your driver, and all you have to do is
Oh,
think it,
really?
and Amazon. Yeah, so I think
Wow.
like, so there are definitely impacts, even though it's just gratitude. There are definitely items like that where it could benefit them in other ways, just because you're doing simple positive gestures like that.
And, there's also something to be said about that intrinsic value too. The psychological benefits of giving and practicing gratitude and generosity are really beneficial into your overall mental health and how you feel. I read some things about that, and I, have tried, those gratitude journals and things like that. And it has made a difference in my mood when I did do those things. So I think there's an art of giving that really is beneficial to us as well when we express that. And like you said, Jay, it has a ripple effect as well. It could be brought home to your kids or your spouse, or, the order that you place your patients with customer service, paying a bill
Yeah.
online. So you never know. Um, but I think that this is the gift that keeps on giving, literally. I'm gonna segue a little bit, maybe not so elegantly into the world of compliance, because that's what we do here at Drata. So I'd love to know, in your mind, Jay, how would you explain what compliance is? Just so you're aware, I'm relatively new to Drata and new to the world of cybersecurity and compliance. So you can explain it to me like I'm five, and just dumb it down for all of us, what you think compliance is.
Yeah, I mean, compliance, so it exists in every tenet of the business. In the human resources world, you have to consider compliance as it relates to labor laws, as it relates to time off, as it relates to everything there with cybersecurity, with all of these different aspects of your business that are super important. And that foundation really requires compliance. It's really governance over a series of processes and systems that is has checks and balances to it. It's like the standard operating procedure of doing the right thing, right? So, with Drata and with the compliance that we've gone through and what we're doing is really just making sure that all of those boxes are checked. And the reality is, I'd say almost all of them are blind spots. You know, you wouldn't otherwise know. There's a lot of common sense baked into the human resources world, but the deeper I got into that, the more you'd learn, wow, I had no idea that was a lot, or I had no idea that this disclosure had to go out at this time or whatever. But it does, otherwise it violates compliance, which is the overarching parent of this must happen to stay within the lines. Um, with cybersecurity, which it's so sensitive and requires so much due diligence around to make sure that it's right, it's important to have a compliance procedure baked in and to know what those blind spots are rather than guess or research on your own or find some sort of manual process and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting too because we meet so many businesses that have such a wonderful concept and foundation and are growing. And then you realize that you do have to think of all these other things to protect your business. And some of it is common sense, but a lot of it is not. And so it's almost another world that you have to unwrap, and get knowledgeable about pretty quickly, when you see your business growing. So wondering why did you find it, and maybe I might have touched on this a bit, but why did you find it important to begin pursuing compliance now?
Actually, when I was originally reached out to, it was someone on your team who I know personally and have been in South Africa with. And we go way, way back. And he pinged me and said, "Hey, this is the company I work for. This is what we do." And the truth is, I'm like, what? What is it? I have really no idea. But once I kind of got into the weeds as to exactly what you do, um, I mean, we were onboarded inside of like a week, I think. And the reason for that is because you can't argue with how critically important it is, right? Cybersecurity, compliance, all security, in all those facets. But for me as a business owner, I want to give it to you to do, right? Like, I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is. I just want to be told what to do, when to do it, why to do it, and then trust the experts to do it. And it's the same way we have our legal counsel and our accounting team. It's like, I'm not trying to learn how to do all these things or guess.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Your expertise is your expertise, and delegating is a smart way to go about business. So it makes a lot of sense, which is why we have professionals in all different areas. Uh,
That's right.
um, okay, so do you feel like compliance is a trust building exercise, a revenue tool for sales, or maybe somewhere in between?
I'd say all of the above because one feeds the other. If you can establish trust by being compliant, you will undoubtedly earn more revenue. Especially depending on who it is that you're conducting business with. Um, those bars are set very, very high, depending on who you're doing business with and what sort of things you need to prove for compliance. And that, if you're not, could potentially be loss of revenue. So I think the two really go hand in hand.
I think so
Yeah,
too.
honestly, I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the other aspects is, as a founder and someone who's building the dream, as you kind of mentioned, being able to delegate that out, there's no reason that you all should have to also learn about this whole process and kind of slow you down, which is the inspiration behind this entire podcast in general is, hearing fantastic stories about delighting customers and delighting your members and building these creative things, but, not burdening yourself at the same time. So, I love hearing
Absolutely.
that
Well said.
emotion and just, yeah, I mean, just kind of confirming the reason why we're here and why we're having these conversations with amazing business creators like yourself.
Yeah, saving time and being more efficient is what all businesses want. As a quick follow-up, you're taking the automated approach to compliance today. Going the automated way makes sense in our mind, considering automation critical to your business. But I'd like to learn why. Do you feel that automation in compliance should accelerate business versus if you are doing it a more manual way? Is the value stemming from the continuous visibility aspect?
No doubt. No doubt it's more efficient to automate everything. I mean, hence why Client Giant automates thoughtfulness. Anything that you can set to just set it and forget it, make it run like a well-oiled machine. It's likely more reliable in terms of consistency, and B, it's just saving an incredible amount of time. So if you think about all the aspects of a business owner and things that they need to manage and have knowledge on, like accounting and human resources and revenue and margin, and the list goes on and on and on and on. The professionals that you outsource to in a lot of those different aspects, they eat, sleep, and breathe whatever it is they're doing. Like legal can sit with me on the phone for 2 hours and explain why this contract is the way it is. The same reason the financial advisor wants to go over this plan for 3 hours. And they're happy to talk about it, but I cannot listen to, right? Like to a certain extent, I need you to do what you're doing and I need to know that it's running automatically um, through some sort of system or process that is fail proof, and that will provide reassurance to me to do what I do best in running the company.
Now that Client Giant is almost 5 years old, what has been your biggest lesson learned over the past 4 years?
I think it actually ties a lot into what we're talking about, which is developing processes and systems early on. And I know that sounds almost like a blanket statement, and there's a bit of a balance here because you don't want to get hung up as a new business owner. You don't want to get hung up in being paralyzed by all the things I haven't talked to an attorney. I don't have the insurance. You don't want to be so tied up in the things that maybe aren't even relevant before you've sold something yet. And I'm very much on the other side where it's like just idea to creation, get the revenue and start going. Just like you just start building, start going. Um, I wouldn't say either one is right or wrong, but I will say that without the proper systems in place from the very beginning, they're much more difficult to implement later on and to clean up and to get structured. Um, there's a variety of different things that have happened like that over the last 5 years to answer your question that I've learned from. So, um, as like with anything. So if I were starting a new company tomorrow, there's certain systems and processes that I'd put in place sooner than I have with Client Giant, just because I've had that experience now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually speaks to the next question I was going to ask you. It was about what advice would you give founders in the early stages of starting their businesses? And it's probably to get to the forefront of a lot of these issues.
Yeah, exactly. The advice I give would absolutely be to build those systems and processes early on. It just makes it so much easier to grow when there's a process already in place. If you have one other employee, it's pretty easy. Like just teach them how to do it. They're on their own. But as you extrapolate it out times 10, 20, and it gets bigger and bigger, the more you don't have the handbook or you don't have the process in place, the more scrambled the whole thing is. And the employee feels that scramble and the clients feel that scramble. So it's really important to have it buttoned up from the get-go.
Yeah, yeah, and you'll probably have to reteach some things and learn new things as you go, which takes up time and I'm sure money as well. And so efficiency is I'm sure very important. Um, our next question, and I think our final question, um, what would you say is the key to building meaningful relationships in business? And I think this is the overarching question that you touched on quite a bit throughout our conversation. But if you have any closing thoughts about that and anything you want us to really take away from this conversation, we'd love to hear it.
The key is to truly give a shit. That's what I say, to really actually truly give a shit. And that doesn't mean to pretend and to say, I'm going to do this and it'll look like this. You have to actually care, and you actually have to care more than your competitors. And if you do that and you just do what you say you're going to do and actually practice those bits of empathy and compassion and extreme generosity, my God, what goes around comes around, and it will all work itself out. But none of that happens from an inauthentic place. It absolutely has to be stemmed from something that's real.
Yeah, yeah, and I think people can see right through that. I think that's why you have so much trust among your members. People can see when things are authentic, and people really care. There's a big difference, even in gift giving. We've all been there before, right? Just on the individual level, where we've gotten a gift that feels very generic and maybe last minute versus something that probably doesn't cost very much and comes from an authentic place. You can really feel the intent behind it. So that's a very good takeaway. And I think that not just only in the art of gift giving, but in all businesses, even here at Drata, this is something that we could take away, also as a learning in how we interact with our customers on a daily basis. So we really, really thank you, Jay. This was one of my favorite conversations to date. I learned a lot from you, and I hope to have more conversations with you in the future. And Elliot, do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, I sure do. Jay, where
Okay.
can folks learn a little bit more about what you do and get, I guess, exposure to what you're building?
Yeah, our website is clientgiant.com. Anything and everything you could want is on there. We're also on LinkedIn and Instagram and all of those at the Client Giant. So you can connect with us there and be happy to walk you through exactly how we can help you make people's days.
Excellent. So that was actually our final question, but thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your journey and your background. We absolutely love what you are building, which is why we made you one of our first victims for this podcast. But thank you so much for joining us and kind of taking part of our journey.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's great meeting you, Helena and Elliot. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Thank you for listening to Compliance Uncomplicated, a Drata podcast. To learn more about the series, go to drata.com/uncomplicated. Discuss this episode on our community secured at community.drata.com or subscribe to our newsletter, Trusted, to stay up to date on the latest episodes.